I'm so proud of you.
Don't look. I don't like me. Oh my goodness. Don't look.
Put your hands up again. I'm giving you the opportunity to get your hands up again.
Oh, chicken wings. Don't look. I'll break your. I will bust your eye socket.
Here we go.
You look at me and I'll punch you.
An example of how bad it did get without government restriction can be seen in Upton Sinclair's book, The Jungle. Upton Sinclair writes in his book, The Jungle, about the meatpacking industry and the condition that workers were forced to work under. This is an example from Upton Sinclair's book. Cut up by the 2,000 revolutions a minute flyers and mixed with half a ton of other meat. No odor that ever was in the hand could make any difference. There would come all the way back from Europe old sausage that had been rejected and that was moldy and white. It would be dosed with borax and glycerin and dumped into the hoppers and made over again for home consumption. There would be meat that had tumbled out on the floor, in the dirt and sawdust, where the workers had trampled and spit uncounted billions of consumption germs. There would be meat stored in great piles in the room, and the water from leaky roofs would drip over it. And thousands of rats would race about on it. It was too dark in these storage places to see one, but a man could run his hand over these piles of meat and sweep off handfuls of dried dung of rats. These rats were nuisances, and the packers put poisoned bread out for them. They would die, and then rats, bread, and meat would go into the hoppers together. The man who did the shoveling would not trouble to lift out the rat, even when he saw them. There were things that went into the sausage in comparison with which a poisoned rat was a tidbit. There was no place for the men to wash their hands before they ate their dinner. And so they made a practice of washing them in the water that was ladled into the sausage. Under the system of rigid economy, which the packers enforced, there were some jobs that it paid only to do once in a long time. And among them was cleaning out the waste barrels. Every spring they did it. And in the barrels would be dirt and rust and old nails and stale water. And cartload after cartload of it would be taken up and dumped into the hoppers with fresh meat and sent out for the public's breakfast. Now that's just an example of what businesses can do. Not what they always do, but what they can do if there is no regulation and there is no restriction. What you need to do is keep in mind that how much do you restrict business? How much do you regulate? Thankfully to Upton Sinclair's book, the Meat Inspection Act and the Pure Food and Drug Act was passed. That's an example of government regulation. But remember, government regulation can go too far, and businesses can lose profits and not make money, and that leads to lower economic growth, layoffs, possibly, and possibly low wages. What we're going to do is we're going to have a debate. And in our debate, I'm going to split the classes into two sides. One side will argue for government regulation of business in the 90s, and the other side will argue against government regulation. So we will prepare this debate tomorrow when we come into class.